Well, today is a pretty significant anniversary when it comes to exploration, I guess you could say. It marks the day that Roald Amundsen announced his discovery of the South Pole.
Oh, wow.
Reaching the South Pole was quite the controversial feat, wouldn't you say?
It certainly was.
Man.
And it's a story that goes way beyond just, planting a flag at the bottom of the world.
Yeah.
It speaks to Amundsen's ambition, his meticulous planning, and really his deep understanding of polar conditions.
Yeah.
Plus, we can't forget the rivalry with Robert Falcon Scott's British team.
Oh, yeah.
Who were also vying for that same prize.
It's amazing to think that these two expeditions were happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
Each pushing the boundaries of human endurance in this incredibly harsh environment.
Yeah.
But before we dive into the race itself,
Okay.
let's take a closer look at Amundsen.
Sure.
This wasn't some amateur adventure, was it?
No, not at all. Amundsen was a seasoned explorer with years of Arctic experience under his belt.
Yeah.
He was actually part of the Belgian Antarctic expedition.
Oh, wow.
Where he really learned firsthand about the challenges of surviving in those extreme conditions.
Yeah.
And his successful navigation of the Northwest Passage
Wow.
really cemented his reputation as a master planner and a skilled leader.
That Arctic experience really shaped his approach to exploration, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
I read that he was deeply inspired by Fridtjof Nansen, another Norwegian polar exploration legend.
Right.
In fact, Amundsen's initial ambition was to conquer the North Pole,
Yeah.
following in Nansen's footsteps.
Yeah, absolutely. But then the exploration world was kind of shaken up when Cook and Peary both claimed to have reached the North Pole first.
Oh, wow.
This really changed everything for Amundsen.
So what did he do? Give up on his polar dreams?
Hardly. Amundsen was not one to back down from a challenge.
Right.
Instead, he made a bold, some might even say audacious decision.
Okay.
He set his sights on the South Pole, and in a move that would spark a lot of controversy, he kept this change of plans a secret, even from most of his own crew.
Wait, so the crew set sail thinking they were heading to the Arctic, only to find out mid-voyage that their destination was actually Antarctica.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine their reaction.
It was a gamble, for sure.
Yeah.
And it certainly caused a stir when the truth was finally revealed.
Yeah.
But to really understand Amundsen's reasoning, we have to consider the context.
Okay.
Polar exploration was a highly competitive field at the time.
Right.
National pride, scientific prestige, and funding were all on the line. Amundsen knew that if he announced this change of plans publicly, he could face major backlash, maybe lose support, and even jeopardize the entire expedition.
That's a lot of pressure.
It is.
So how did he manage to keep such a huge secret?
Well, he confided in only a few of his most trusted officers.
Okay.
They set sail from Norway on the Fram,
Well,
a ship with its own fascinating history.
Yeah. I've heard about the Fram.
It had been built by Nansen for his own polar expeditions.
Right.
And was specifically designed to withstand the crushing pressure of the polar ice.
I read about the Fram's unique design. Didn't it have a rounded hull
Yes.
that was meant to allow the ship to be pushed up by the ice rather than crushed?
That's right.
Almost like an eel slipping out of the ice's grip, as one description put it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that design, along with the incredibly strong construction, using reinforced beams and just the toughest wood available, made the Fram the ideal vessel for this risky venture.
Wow.
I mean, it had to be a floating fortress, basically, capable of enduring some of the harshest conditions imaginable.
It's incredible to think of them setting sail in a ship built for Arctic conditions.
Right.
And then taking it to the opposite end of the world.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes about Amundsen's confidence in the Fram's capabilities.
Yeah.
And his own boldness as an explorer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as they sailed south, the crew started to suspect that something was up.
Yeah.
The further they strayed from their supposed Arctic route, the more questions arose.
Yeah.
Imagine the tension and the speculation on board.
Oh, I bet there were some raised eyebrows, to say the least.
I bet so.
Finally, when they reached Madeira,
Okay.
Amundsen revealed his true objective.
Wow.
You can imagine the shock and the confusion, but also maybe a sense of excitement being part of something so daring and so unprecedented.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did the world react when the news got out? I imagine there was quite a mixed bag of responses.
It was mixed, especially in Norway and Britain.
Okay.
A lot of people felt misled,
right,
even betrayed by Amundsen's secrecy.
Yeah.
Funding dried up, criticism mounted, and Amundsen found himself facing an even tougher challenge than he had anticipated.
Talk about pressure.
Oh, yeah.
He was essentially going rogue, pushing forward, despite the controversy and the backlash.
Yeah.
It really adds another layer to the story, doesn't it?
It does.
So they finally arrive in the Bay of Whales in Antarctica.
Yeah.
And they establish their base camp at Framheim.
Yeah.
This is where the real preparations for the journey to the South Pole began, right?
This is it. This is where Amundsen's meticulous planning really came into play.
Yeah.
They couldn't possibly carry all the supplies they would need for the entire journey to the pole and back.
Right.
So they began this crucial task of setting up supply depots along their planned route.
These depots were essentially lifelines, weren't they?
They were.
Strategically placed caches of food and supplies that would allow them to travel lighter and replenish their stocks along the way.
That's right.
And this is where we start to see one of the key differences between Amundsen's approach and that of Robert Falcon, Scott.
Yeah.
You're talking about their choice of transportation, right?
Exactly.
Amundsen's reliance on dogs versus Scott's preference for man-hauling.
Exactly. Amundsen, from his years in the Arctic, had adopted the Inuit approach to dog sledding.
Okay.
And it wasn't just about hitching dogs to a sled.
Right.
It was a deep understanding of dog handling, breeding, training, and even nutrition.
Wow.
He saw the dogs as partners, not just beasts of burden.
That makes sense, especially in such a harsh environment.
Right.
It's a partnership born out of necessity, isn't it?
It is.
So how did Amundsen put this philosophy into practice?
Well, he carefully selected his dogs, choosing Greenland Huskies, known for their strength, their endurance, and their resistance to the cold.
Wow.
And he didn't just drive the sled. He understood the nuances of dog behavior, how to read their signals and how to maximize their efficiency.
While Amundsen was harnessing the power of dogs, Scott's team was relying primarily on human muscle.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on the challenges and the sheer grit involved in man-hauling?
Yeah, man-hauling was back-breaking work.
Yeah.
Imagine teams of men harnessed to these heavy sledges loaded with supplies, trudging across miles and miles of this unforgiving terrain. I mean, they face blizzards, biting winds, and temperatures that could freeze exposed skin in an instant.
It's hard to imagine the sheer physical exertion and determination required for that kind of journey.
Yeah, it was a monumental task. And as we'll see, this difference in philosophy would play a significant role in the outcome of the race to the pole.
Right.
But before we delve into that dramatic chapter, let's go back to the Bay of Whales, where another unexpected encounter added fuel to the already heated competition between these two polar exploration teams.
You're talking about the moment when Amundsen's team and Scott's team actually crossed paths.
That's right.
Wow. Okay, I have to hear more about this.
Okay.
Let's unpack this encounter and see how it set the stage to the dramatic race to the South Pole.
Just picture it, the vast, icy expanse of the Bay of Whales. You have Amundsen's Fram anchored there, and suddenly a ship appears on the horizon, the Terra Nova, carrying Scott's British expedition.
What a moment. That must have been, talk about an awkward run-in. I mean, both teams are there with the same goal in mind, to be the first to reach the South Pole.
Right.
Did they at least try to be civil?
Oh, they maintained a veneer of politeness, you know?
Yeah.
Exchanging pleasantries,
right,
sharing news from the outside world.
Okay.
But beneath the surface, you know, the tension must have been palpable.
Yeah.
These were, after all, fierce competitors in a very high-stakes game of exploration and national pride.
I can only imagine the competitive spirit that was simmering beneath the surface.
Yeah.
So after this unexpected encounter, both teams set about preparing for their respective journeys south.
Right.
But their approaches, as you mentioned earlier, were quite different.
Yeah.
Let's dive into those contrasting strategies.
Okay.
Especially the reliance on dogs versus man-hauling.
Yeah, Amundsen, from his years in the Arctic, had really adopted the Inuit approach to dog sledding.
Right.
And it wasn't just about hitching dogs to a sled.
Yeah.
It was a deep understanding of dog handling, breeding training, and even nutrition.
Wow.
He really saw the dogs as partners not just beasts of burden.
That makes sense, especially in such a harsh environment.
Right.
It's a partnership born out of necessity, isn't it?
It is.
So how did Amundsen put this philosophy into practice?
Well, he carefully selected his dogs.
Okay.
Choosing Greenland Huskies,
Okay.
known for their strength, their endurance, and their resistance to the cold.
Right.
And he didn't just drive the sled, he understood the nuances of dog behavior,
Okay.
how to read their signals, and how to maximize their efficiency.
While Amundsen was harnessing the power of dogs,
Yeah.
Scott's team was relying primarily on human muscle.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on the challenges and the sheer grit involved in man-hauling?
Yeah, man-hauling was back-breaking work.
Yeah.
Imagine teams of men harnessed to these heavy sledges, laden with supplies trudging across miles and miles of this unforgiving terrain.
Right.
They faced blizzards, biting winds, and temperatures that could freeze exposed skin in an instant.
It's hard to imagine the sheer physical exertion and determination required for that kind of journey.
It was a monumental task.
Yeah.
And as we'll see, this difference in philosophy would play a significant role in the outcome of the race to the pole.
Right.
But before we delve into that dramatic chapter,
Okay.
let's go back to Amundsen and his team.
Okay.
They set off from Framheim in February 1911 for their first depot-laying journey.
Okay. This was essential for their plan, right?
It was.
They needed to establish these supply caches along the route to the pole.
Yeah, they needed to lighten their load for the final push, ensure they had enough supplies for the return trip.
So how far south did they manage to get on this first depot run?
They got to 80 degrees south.
Wow, that's pretty far.
It is, and they deposited a huge amount of supplies there. Food, fuel, everything they'd need.
Okay, so they returned to Framheim and waited for the right conditions to make their final push for the pole.
That's right. But it wasn't just a matter of waiting around. Amundsen kept his team busy.
What were they doing to prepare?
They refined their equipment, they practiced their skiing and dog handling skills,
Okay.
and they even built a sauna at Framheim.
The sauna.
Can you believe it? In Antarctica.
I know it sounds crazy, but it was a way for them to relax and stay warm and maintain morale during those long winter months.
I guess even explorers need a little bit of downtime.
They do.
So with their preparations complete and the polar spring approaching, they were ready for the final challenge.
Yes, the race to the pole was about to begin.
They had reached the South Pole, planted their flag, and left their mark on history. But as you said, the journey wasn't over. They still had to get back to Framheim, and I imagine that return trip was no walk in the park.
Oh, it definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, they were retracing their steps, but this time they were facing,
Yeah,
the added pressure of time
Right.
and dwindling supplies.
yeah. They were racing against that approaching Antarctic winter, knowing that if they were caught in its grip, their chances of survival would be very slim.
It's one thing to conquer a geographical point,
Right.
but it's another thing entirely to make it back alive.
Yeah.
What were some of the specific challenges that they faced on that return journey?
Well, for one thing, they were traveling downhill on much of the route,
Okay.
which, contrary to what you might think, can be just as dangerous, if not more so, than going uphill.
Right.
Controlling those heavily laden sleds on steep, icy slopes required incredible skill and constant vigilance.
I bet.
One wrong move could send them, tumbling into a crevasse or cause a serious injury.
It's amazing how even in moments of triumph, nature always has a way of reminding you of its power and its unpredictability.
Absolutely. And they were still battling the elements, the relentless wind, the biting cold, the blinding snow.
Right.
But they did have the advantage of following those pre-laid supply depots, which, provided crucial sustenance and allowed them to maintain a pretty good pace.
So their meticulous planning, which seemed almost obsessive at times,
Yeah,
really paid off in those crucial moments.
it really did. And Amundsen's leadership skills were also put to the test,
Yeah.
He had to keep his team motivated and focused and unified in the face of, exhaustion and the psychological strain of such an arduous journey.
They eventually made it back to Framheim, didn't they?
Yeah.
What was that moment like, returning to civilization after such an incredible feat?
It was a moment of immense relief and joy. They had conquered the South Pole and returned safely, a testament to their resilience, their skill, and their teamwork.
Yeah.
They had a celebratory dinner at Framheim, a well-deserved feast after weeks of subsisting on pemmican and dog meat.
Right.
And then they packed up the Fram and set sail for Hobart, Tasmania, where Amundsen planned to announce his victory to the world.
And how did the world receive the news? I imagine it caused quite a stir.
Oh, it did. Initially, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Congratulations poured in from around the globe,
Wow.
including messages from King George V of England and even former U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt.
Wow.
Amundsen and his team were hailed as heroes, particularly in Norway, where they became national icons.
It's interesting how these early explorers captured the public imagination, embodying this spirit of adventure and pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible.
Yeah, they were the astronauts of their time, you know, venturing into uncharted territories, facing unimaginable risks, and returning with these tales that inspired awe and wonder.
But sadly, this triumph was soon overshadowed by tragedy, wasn't it? What happened to Scott and his team?
Yeah, while Amundsen was celebrating his success in Hobart, Scott and his team were still making their way back from the South Pole. They had reached it on January 17, 1912, about a month after Amundsen, but their journey back was just this heartbreaking tale of misfortune and hardship.
I remember reading about the terrible conditions they faced: blizzards, extreme cold, dwindling supplies, and exhaustion. They were simply overwhelmed by the unforgiving nature of the Antarctic.
They fought bravely, but in the end, they succumbed to the elements. Scott and his 4 companions perished on the return journey.
Wow.
Their bodies, along with Scott's diaries and records, were found months later, a poignant testament to their courage and their unwavering determination.
It's a story that continues to resonate, doesn't it? This clash of ambition, exploration, and the raw power of nature. How did the news of Scott's death affect Amundsen?
Well, he was deeply saddened by the news, expressing admiration for Scott's bravery and acknowledging the inherent risks in these types of expeditions, you know. I think it must have been a bittersweet victory for him, knowing that his rivals had paid the ultimate price in their pursuit of the same goal.
The public perception of the 2 expeditions shifted dramatically after the news of Scott's death, didn't it?
It did.
Amundsen's achievement, though remarkable, was somewhat eclipsed by the tragic narrative of Scott's heroic failure.
It's true. Scott's expedition, despite its tragic end, captured the public imagination in a way that Amundsen's perhaps did not nor. Scott became a symbol of British grit and determination, a martyr to the cause of exploration. Amundsen, on the other hand, was sometimes portrayed as a more pragmatic, even ruthless figure. His reliance on dogs seen by some as diminishing his achievement.
It seems unfair that his incredible feat of planning skill and leadership was sometimes overshadowed by the romanticism surrounding Scott's ill-fated expedition.
It does highlight how narratives, especially in exploration, can be shaped by factors beyond the achievements themselves, but I think over time there's been a growing recognition of Amundsen's brilliance as an explorer. He wasn't just lucky, he was a master of his craft, a man who understood the intricacies of polar travel and who planned and executed his expedition with exceptional precision.
So what are the key takeaways from Amundsen's South Pole expedition? What can we learn from his approach to exploration, his leadership, and his legacy?
Well, I think it's a story about the importance of preparation and adaptability, and a deep respect for the environment you're venturing into. Amundsen's success wasn't just about reaching a geographical point. It was about understanding the challenges, mitigating the risks, and working in harmony with, rather than against, the forces of nature.
It's a reminder that exploration isn't just about conquering, it's also about learning, adapting, and respecting the delicate balance of the natural world. Amundsen's story continues to inspire, challenge, and remind us of the power of human ambition, resilience, and the enduring allure of the unknown.